If you complete the Frostbite Season's Season Pass all the way to stage 100, you'll be rewarded with this Tier 10 Polish Premium Heavy Tank, the Czolg, at least I believe that's how you pronounce it, PWZ-46. This tank's 155mm gun deals 750 alpha damage. With its 21-second base reload value, it gives this tank a base DPM value of 2145, which is higher than its tech tree brother, the 60TP, but lower than the German and Japanese 15cm. It's even lower than that of the 705A. But again, being higher than the 60TP is noteworthy. Of course, I'm comparing it to these tanks because of their alpha damage and calibers, but this thing is a 155mm, not a 150 or 152. So how does its pen look because of that? Well, even though the only other 155mm heavy tank has tank destroyer levels of penetration, this thing does not, thankfully. This tank's 155mm actually shares the 60TP's penetration values, with 250 standard AP pen and 1050 shell speed, which is a significant improvement to the 60TP's 900 AP shell speed, and 317 premium heat penetration and also 900 shell speed. So that caliber difference means really nothing, except for, I suppose, standard AP shell speed, as you're basically using a 60TP's gun, but with better DPM. You have the exact same penetration values, and the extra 3mm on the caliber won't change anything for you, as both a 155 and 152 can both overmatch 50mm plates. At least that means you have that over the 15cm, which cannot. Not only is this gun a faster firing 60TP's gun, if we take a look at the gun handling, it is actually more accurate too, with its .37 to the 60TP's .39. They both share 3 seconds of aim time, however. And the 60TP has more gun depression with its 8 degrees to the Czolg's 6 degrees of gun depression. Overall though, the Czolg has the better gun, with better accuracy, standard shell speed, and DPM despite being a bigger caliber. How does that 6 degrees play with the armor though? Well, its armor is quite nice, but it has some big and easy to hit weaknesses, mainly 3. The first being this big cupola on the back of this long turret. It's only 150mm thick and slightly angled, but most guns this tank will fight will be able to go through that as long as they can see it. If you somehow get an angle utilizing all 6 degrees of gun depression on someone, it is possible to hide the cupola thanks to how long the turret is and how far back the point is on the turret itself. This is hard to pull off though, as again you only have 6 degrees of gun depression to work with. The other obvious weakness is the lower plate, which is also 150mm thick and even more well angled this time around. It is possible to angle this against tall opponents and have them bounce, but it's also unlikely due to its thickness. They'll still have a high chance to pen. Speaking of angling, this tank's side armor is both nice and not so nice. Above the tracks is a well-angled inward cut of 120mm thick armor. On top of that cut is only 5mm of spaced armor. And that's pretty good for side scraping and such, but the sides behind the tracks leave a bit to be desired. The tracks are only 30mm of spaced armor, covering 80mm of flat side armor, meaning it can be easy to accidentally over-angle this tank and get penned in the side because of it. But even if the sides were better, you'd still have a weakness to contend with, that being this turret ring ridge. Now it looks good and thick being bright red, but it's very flat, and 270mm thick. It's not your normal weakness where anyone will go through it, but it will only take standard pen from tank destroyers to go through this, and even light tank premium rounds can hit this spot too. They will have to hit flush with it since it's curved around the hole, but it's sticking straight up, so it's pretty flat if they do hit flush despite the curve around. It's also worth knowing that you shouldn't keep your turret idle in front of tanks, because although they have those 3 parts to pen, there's still the chance they decide to go through your face. It's only 240mm thick in these areas, which are smaller and harder to hit, but I have been penned in my face from time to time, and it's really irritating. Nothing about this tank screams pennable face, but there it is. Despite all the other parts to worry about, you still have to worry about your face being penned too, sadly. Another thing to worry about is the ammo racks on this tank. There's a lot of ammo stowed in the back of the turret that rounds up to the back sides too. So if someone shoots you in the back of the turret, you're likely to have a damaged ammo rack. But if that someone also has a large caliber gun, like yourself, you might just get one-shot ammo racked instead. The racks on this tank are a bit weak. I've been ammo racked 3 or 4 times in the games that I've played, and it does not feel very good. It's been a while since I've played a tank this easy to be racked, and I feel that I must mention it, because most of them were one-shot racks. Not damaged and then racked, but just straight up racked from the get-go. Despite all the parts to pen though, this tank does hold up quite a bit, and it's partially because of its 2600 HP to tank hits with and allow it to trade with its high 750 alpha damage, but it's also because of its speed. You wouldn't think this high HP heavy tank with a 155mm gun would have notable speed, but trust me, it does. It goes 40 km an hour forward and 16 backwards. That puts it on par with something like an AMX M454, but with the HP of a super heavy. But it's not just its top speed that feels out of place, it's got 1200 horsepower, giving it an unbelievable 17.14 base power to weight ratio, which is more than the AMX's 15 power to weight. So it's got a 155mm gun on a platform that goes 40 km an hour forward with insane horsepower per ton. And you can really feel that in game. It hits its stride super quickly and better than all of the super heavies and even some normal heavies like the AMX already mentioned, and even the T110E5 and Chieftain Mark VI in terms of mobility. It's probably the best part about this tank, because screw making the armor work when you could just play like a huge medium tank with all that speed and power. It really doesn't feel like a super heavy at all. It feels quite mobile, especially for its size and gun caliber. It only has a 26 track traverse speed, but trust me, that doesn't hold it back one bit. When this thing wants to change positions or leave, it goes. It really just goes. It's quick to get up to speed and thus quick to get to where it wants. The only thing holding it back is the top speed limit itself in the first place. If it was limited to 50, trust me, it'd get there too. Moving on to the last thing to mention, its spotting capabilities. It's a heavy tank, so you know its camo isn't anything worthwhile, but I must mention its low view range. Tier 10 heavies like to average 400 meters, which is helpful, but this thing, like its 60 TP counterpart, only sports 390 meters view range. But closing the distance will be quick to make up for that loss in view range, I suppose, if you need to spot that target yourself, am I right? Anyway, that's the Czolg PWZ-46. It's a weird tank, that's for sure. Nimble for a heavy tank, insane horsepower for its size, HP indicative of a super heavy, with a 155mm gun that really just feels like a better 152mm from the 60 TP, and armor that feels lacking in the face department but ultimately holds up well regardless. It's really a brawler of a tank that does rival the other super heavies, but for reasons I don't really know if I like. You know what it feels like to me? It feels like the epitome of today's meta. It's a super heavy that doesn't feel super heavy. It's not slow by any means, and yet it still holds up like a super heavy thanks to its armor, big punch, and lots of HP. Something like an Object 705A rides the line between normal and super heavies, with big alpha, good armor, and HP, but also decent mobility. This feels like it should have been like that. It feels like a tank that should have 650 alpha damage and 2500 HP to compete with the lesser super heavies, or something like that. Otherwise, if they really wanted to make it a 60 TP E100 hybrid super heavy, I think it needs better face armor, 2700 HP to fill in the gap when we buff the E100's HP, and its horsepower to be cut by a third, or maybe even a half. That to me would have made a cohesive tank. Otherwise it feels like power creep has hit super heavies. They know people don't like playing slow tanks, so here you go, 17 power to weight ratio on a super heavy. Luckily they kept the pen of the 60 TP on this, because if they had decided this tank would have great pen since it's a 155mm like the T58, then this thing would be overpowered. But as I see it, it's just oddly strong, in a way that doesn't really fit the look or feel I had for this tank. Is that a bad thing? Not necessarily, but it does have me wishing for that tank I had expected when I saw it. Either the 650 alpha damage tank to rival the 705A, or the true 2700 HP 60 TP E100 hybrid that I was hoping for. But what we have instead is a mobile super heavy. It's just odd is all I'm saying. But it's also well worth getting. So finish out those season passes and make sure to get that skin from stage 120 as well. Before we get into the gameplay though, let's look at my loadout. Since the view range is low, I decided to lean in on that better 60 TP gun with vert stabs instead of optics. And a gun rammer and vents round out my equipment. For the consumables, it's a premium repair kit, food rations, and a premium med kit. My commander is running 6th Sense, steady aim, rapid loading, snapshot, situational awareness, born leader, run and gun, supply conservation, and deadeye. Deadeye was working pretty well in this tank with its larger caliber size, and you could decide to run safe stowage instead of supply conservation if the ammo racks are getting popped too easily for you like they were for me. But now on to the gameplay. Here we are on Pilsen for the first game. Now, I had a lot of games to look through. I had like 5 contenders and I had to choose 2 of them. And the 5 contenders were all really good games. Meanwhile, I had lots of 4 to 5k damage games in this tank that I just didn't take as contenders because I had these other ones that were much higher. But I like to spoil things at the beginning of these gameplay portions, and I guess I'll spoil this because none of them were ace tankers. But had I had these games 2 days later than when I got them, they would have been ace tankers. Does that make sense? No, not really, but someone got an ace that was of the same value, if not less, 2 days after I got these games. And so, yeah. Anyway, what's funny about this match is it's not standard Pilsen, which always pisses me off, but because I have this speed, I decided I'm going to get over here pretty quickly. I'm going to get into a position that I normally never get to play in because I wouldn't take a medium here, but I'm going to take a super heavy here. That's behind them for those who went down to this corner to fight. And whatever, I'm going to have to fight where I'm looking right now. So this 120mm, probably upset that I got to shoot him in the rear. Fortunately, I didn't track him, so my team didn't just give me free damage. But he does get a shot into me because I didn't realize he was backing up. And so I let him get a shot into me. But I trade successfully with him, doing 1547 to him. And I've only taken one 420 alpha round myself. Because yes, that tank is 420 alpha now. We notice where we are and how many teammates we have not really with us. We have one heavy tank down the D line that's going to lane with us for whatever comes up there, and one medium out in A1. So what I decided to do is, if I got someone laning my rear, I'm going to try and lane this Earthshaker. Now I was expecting when I got spotted there that the Earthshaker had poked, but instead it was a Czolg going into the same position where the 120mm is. Does he notice me? Does he read his map? Well, maybe not, but instead of figuring that out, I'm going to decide to get rid of the 120mm because he forgot about me. And now I have 2100 HP because that's how much HP that tank has. So we're still just waiting for more shots. I just realized, yeah, that thing has 2100 HP now. Now, had I known about the ammo rack, which I do damage his ammo rack, but had I gone for the one in the back of his turret, I might have ammo racked there with Deadeye. But I didn't go for it. I went for the easier shot because I didn't want to bounce off the curve off of the back of his turret because that was a possibility, right? There's me shooting into his drive wheel while he's well angled, and that's just showing you the 80mm side armor behind that. How unforgiving it is if you over angle in the slightest. I put one into his drive wheel and that was enough. Now we'll put one into his lower plate and get rid of him. 3878 damage so far. We've only taken one 420 alpha damage hit. And there's an IS-7 right next to us. But I kind of want to shoot that Earthshaker. Because I don't think the IS-7 is going to poke. But boy, was I wrong. The Earthshaker's not going to poke. Now, somehow I wasn't over angling against him. He actually hits my tracks, but doesn't pen the 80mm behind it. Good for me, right? So what do I decide to do? Well, I'm trying to see if he has friends back there. That tank destroyer is far around the corner, so I can poke for free. Thankfully, much like I did to the enemy Czolg, he doesn't pop my top with that shot going into my ammo rack. Because not only is there ammo rack in the turret, but there's ammo rack in the hole. The ammo rack in the turret, though, seems pretty weak. Regardless, we've down 5,000 damage now in less than 4 minutes with a strong forward play position that utilized our horsepower per ton to get into a position where normally just mediums would go, or less armored heavy tanks with more speed would go, or the IS-7, which really has great armor. Earthshaker sets someone on fire next to me. It's my platoon mate, but he finishes him off after I put a round in him, so we're near 6,000 damage. It's 8-6, so we're winning. Now it's 7-6. I feel like we got this in the bag. All I have to do is push. Death Star to my right dies. I was checking the line before I poked him. Didn't realize that my teammate would just go wide and poke him, being 500 HP. So now I just gotta run in and get my damage. And luckily, Whereas any other super heavy in this sort of stage of the game would suffer in getting to position against these enemy tanks that are dug in, while what's left on my team are mediums. I get here with plenty of time. I get here while they still have HP. I get here while, you know, I can get some damage. Whereas if I was in an E100, so to say, I just probably still wouldn't be here by the time that this T-32A Proto would probably be dead. So thankfully, there is that I failed to mention in the review portion, but you can keep up with the battles because of your speed, right? It's not just about getting into position quickly and fast and whatnot, but it's about being able to keep up. Now, annoyingly, a platoon mate steals a kill from me right there in front of me while I was trying to get the side shot, and gets the other one. So this wasn't an ace because I didn't get enough kills. Only 3 kills, 71, 75 damage. Look at that kill stealer over there with 5 kills. Mother. Anyway, it's a BIA first class. I told you I wasn't getting an ace in this game. You know it. You love it. Good first match, though, to show off. It wasn't my first match, but one of my many 7Ks. And on to the next game, which is my highest damage game in the vehicle. And also pretty upsetting. And you'll see why. Now, we only have 6 degrees of gun depression. And we have good speeds. So what do I decide to do? Do I want to go city with my speed and make it across pretty quickly? Or do I want to play the valley while they have an artillery? Well, clearly you can see what decision I made. And that is to play the valley despite the artillery. I want to see if my 6 degrees of gun depression can really work. I want to see if my DPM is good enough. I want to see if my, I just want to see how it does. Otherwise, I think, had I been thinking about it now, I probably would have gone city at this point. But, nonetheless, we troop on. I want to get into behind that rock and see if I can really work it. I am large, and that is something you have to think about, is your size. How many positions are too small for you? Are you too big for, right? But I feel like this rock is big enough for me. So I'm going to try and take it. 6 degrees isn't working out well for me there, but he bounces my side while I put a round into him. Low rolled. And this rear turreted heavy tank wants to get up there. Whatever. I let him slide. I take another ricochet from the 420 Alpha E5. And now we're going to track this 705A. Get 790 track assisted because of that. Unfortunately, the 4202 puts a round into me, which I'm just kind of annoyed at. You can see it right at the side, right in my cupola. So he knows what he's doing while the other guys are bouncing me. So now I'm just going to play the weight game, right? I only have 6 degrees of gun depression. I don't feel like poking. If they're going to poke me, I'll trade, right? Successfully. 420 alpha damage for 722. I have the HP to play with. I have the alpha to trade with. You might have the DPM, but if we're trading one-on-one, who's winning? Me. Now, our artillery shooting AP, he could have taken out the E5 by now, but he's not. The rear turreted heavy tank is dead. Would you believe that? I don't know what he was doing up there, but he's dead now. We're already up to 2100 damage with only 2 minutes in the battle. The Tyran on the enemy team kills my other teammate now, so both my VK and my 780 are both dead to him. And I'm just playing the waiting game, like I said. I don't want to overpeak. I don't want to get shot by who knows how many tanks are back there. There's a Tyran back there. There's 705A right in front of me. 650 plus 950 doesn't sound like a lot of fun to me. So we're just waiting. And waiting. If they want to make the push, I'll let them make the push, right? Here, though, I did something kind of stupid. There's no reason for me to try and poke what's back there, with our artillery already having targets to shoot at here, and he's shooting AP. I also don't have optics, and I have 390 base view range, so I'm not going to outspot a Tyran by doing that. 400 alpha heavy tank, or 400 meter view range heavy tank with optics might be able to do something, but I don't have either of that. Now, this E5 is making a weird position. It's a different E5 than the other one that had the black skin. But as soon as he fires, I decide, alright. Free shot. Where do I want to aim? Well, he stood still for me, so I aim at the cupola. I tried to see... You could see he's kind of like at an angle, so I thought maybe shooting his upper plate would be fine. You saw the color of the reticle. Scared me. Looked at the lower plate. Because of the angle again. Scared me. So I went for that cupola and I hit. Now he's backing off. He somehow got out of there that quickly. That kind of surprised me. But 3,600 damage now. 10 to 12. We're not winning, but we're not losing. We haven't lost the city yet. We haven't lost the 4 line. And I'm, of course, on the valley line, so... Again, I'm just waiting. And even though I said this was sort of a brawler tank, you don't want to take brawls you don't need to, right? Unfortunately, there with my 250 AP at that angle on his lower plate, I just didn't connect it. I probably could have hit his drive wheel, but it's alright. We load the heat round and we try again, right? Doing my best to provide little to no armor for somebody to shoot, but he's shooting HE. And so that kind of worries me, because if I don't start penning him and my AP shooting artillery doesn't pen him, then he's going to trade better than me because he gets guaranteed damage. This guy, though, overpeaks. Gets baited by the T-30 or whatever's to my left from shooting. And look at that reverse speed and horsepower. Look at that. I was keeping up with his push forward. And he was trying to get my side. He didn't take the shot for whatever reason, but good, luckily for us, right? We track him, unfortunately, instead of hitting that lower plate with our heat round that we loaded. And is artillery going to pen him with AP? No. Unfortunately, we don't get any tracking assisted because he gets shot just barely after he got untracked. But he pulls forward and we finally pen that heat round into his lower plate. Again, you saw our artillery shooting AP there. And I don't know if artillery shot HE there, how differently this game would have turned out. You know, how much less damage I would have gotten. And, well, the outcome of the game overall. TVP wants to pull up now. We don't know where the terrain went. I do know there's 3 tank destroyers, though. I'm waiting for things to be spotted so that I can count them up and see where things are. We know there's 1 medium over in the city. We know another medium was just spotted here. He's going down the 4 line. So there's some heavies and tank destroyers that need to be spotted and accounted for, excuse me. One of the E5s that lived at the end, all the way in the back there, I decided to go for the healthier shot against the Death Star. I do remember even saying at this moment, I maybe should have taken out the E5, since the TVP might get dicked down by the E5. But I see the E5 was moving, so what do? I wait for the clothesline shot. I wait to see if he drives out in the open, the TVP, or I spot him, and I can finish him off. Because it did look like he was leaving. Unfortunately, the TVP does die to the Death Star like I was hoping he wouldn't. My heat round does set him on fire, so we do get the kill on the Death Star despite him not being one shot. And the E5 is clearly still back there, as he just shot at us. 6,488 damage so far, 6 to 7. We were losing by 2, but now we're only losing by 1. And we still have the city, but notice, the UDES just died on the 4 line, but there's 2 tank destroyers on the 4 line, and there's 2 tank destroyers left alive on the enemy team, with 1 medium over on the 4 line. So they have 3 on the 4 line. So what do I decide to do at this moment? I'm by myself. I see where their other medium is, so I know where their 2 heavies are. One's a 1-shot E5, and the other one is a 2-shot IS-32. So I push. I make the push. Now I catch the E5 on that clothesline play I wanted to make earlier. He bounces me. I hit him with AP. I load the heat round for the Russian heavy that I'm going to have to fight here in a second, and he does push. Unfortunately here, he's a double barrel, so he's got great DPM, and my artillery still refuses to shoot an HE round and be useful. So I do have to 2-shot this man. I take the bait off of him, which kind of sucked. He does back up. I do get the round into him, but I don't track him or anything, so he gets a round into me. He's got the bigger gun. I don't know if he just double shot me, actually, but I do know that I need to get rid of him. It's 4 to 4. 3 of them are on the 4 line. They're going to go and kill my artillery, and I need to cap their base or set up a defense. Finally, artillery helps me out. He takes out the IS-32. We're at 600 HP. We know there was a Tran left alive, so we are one-shottable. We've done 1,000 tracking, or 1,000 combined of spotting and tracking, and I make my way towards the cap here, hoping that one of them retreated so that I could get some more damage. And look at that. The UDES went towards my teammates. Can I get a shot onto him? Yes, I can, and we do connect, and we high roll for 792. Now we notice that the terrain just took out our artillery, and there's 1 guy on the 4 line. So what do we want to do? Well, since my 2 mediums are over there, and they just killed the Ag Tiger, it's now a 3 versus 1. I think we got it in the bag, right? I load HE for the Turan. Well, I'm hoping at this point since he's been spotted on that 4 line, and since he's been playing in other positions where I haven't been, that he's taken a little bit of damage. But maybe, I think, he hasn't taken enough to where I can one-shot him with an AP round. So instead I load an HE round, thinking this should be easy, right? Well, here's my first mistake. I get spotted, he's full health, and I don't pen my HE round. And because he's a ridiculously fast tank, and look at that track traverse speed, well, he just gets behind me and ammo racks me. And would you believe it? But my team actually lost. And this clown did 9,600 damage in his overpowered terrain with 8 kills, but I did 8,700 and got 3rd place on a loss for only a 3rd class. Now, I could have done 9,000 damage if I didn't load an HE round, but who cares? That didn't happen. This is what we got. And that is the Czolg for you guys. Good tank, worthwhile tank, odd tank though. Still wish there were some changes to it despite it not being overpowered in the sense. Thank you for watching though, and I'll see you next time.